Hello and welcome to Sriram's IES. Now we all are aware of this thing that we are actually doing the Indian economy by Sriram sir, and this book is about I would say that we have completed around 2 chapters of this book. Today we will be starting with the 3rd chapter, and if you see that we have completed not only the 2 chapters, but in addition to it we have also addressed multiple other concepts like the concept of free economics or the story of free economics. Further, we already discussed about the production possibility curve, which is not mentioned in the book, and multiple other things or concepts which we are doing in this series. This is basically one thing that we are doing with the book. Every part of it, every word of the book is important, and that is why we are taking only those things which are mentioned in the book, and plus in addition to that, in order to make the concepts more clear and crisp, we are adding it with some value addition from my side. That is my contribution, and that is a reward for all those students who actually are doing this kind of hard work, that they are doing this book page to page. Now that was one thing. Second thing, today's lecture we will be starting with the third, I would say third chapter of this book. But before we start, I would like to highlight over here, or I would like to narrate a story. This is basically a quote which was written in the John Maynard Keynes's book, The General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money. So this quote goes like this, that if there was a treasury and this state has to fill all the old bottles or whatever the bottles are there, whether you find them in your neighborhood, plastic bottles, glass bottles, and what state does is, or the treasury of the state does, they fill these old bottles with banknotes and fill them all. Once they fill them all, they go and deposit them or bury them in the old coal mines. All we know that we have leftover coal mines, all those coal mines which went extinct from where coal was totally, I would say, mined, and we fill all those coal mines with those bottles which are full of banknotes or which are full of rupees. Now, after that, what we do is we bury it under a whole of the trash and the waste which you might have seen in your surroundings, the waste mountains which we are seeing in Delhi, the waste pile-ups in the dumping yards. All this waste is brought and these bottles are buried under this waste. Now, after this, if the government under laissez-faire, or I would say free market economics, allow all the private players and enterprises to go and dig that money out and take that money and use it, what do you think will happen? In the general theory of employment, income and employment, or employment, interest and money, John Maynard Keynes argues about this thing, that this process will lead to what? The repercussion will be that the real income of the community and its capital wealth will also increase. Now, not only by digging up that money or taking those banknotes out, but this would probably lead to the, I would say, the income or income generation, not only of those enterprises who are digging that money, but all the people who are employed to do that work. So similarly, you might have seen that government doing some of those things which otherwise should have meant no reason, like we do witness that there are people who sweep the streets every day. We know that there are people who actually are building houses for people. There are people who are building pavements around your surroundings. What government is actually doing with that? They are supplying money to them. They are giving them money. But why should government give money to anyone? Because this in turn will lead to what? This in turn will lead to employment and then income. And once employment and income is generated in an economy, this will have an effect which is known as the consumption or this investment multiplier concept, and then again this further leads to in the end consumption smoothing concept. Now, we will not go into those 2 concepts because that is what deals with economics, but yes, I will be telling you those concepts in the next chapters which are upcoming when we discuss about inflation in detail. So, with this thought or with the quote of John Maynard Keynes, let's begin today's lecture. before we go into detail, our today's lecture will be around economic growth and economic development. Now see, we have already covered economic growth. We are done with this. We understood what growth is. We understood that we need to measure the economic growth. So we read the chapter of economic growth measurement or measures of economic growth. Now we will be concerned with the part of development. So thereby in this chapter we will see that what goes beyond GDP, what goes beyond the numbers in economy. Understood? So let's start this discussion, but before that, if you as an aspirant, I would say a friend talking to a friend, I would ask you that if you seriously are struggling with your preparation, if you seriously are finding yourself in trouble managing your time, resources and your I would say attempt, or you might have been struggling in arranging your time between the GS, CSAT, optional and then current affairs. So this journey we all have traveled through it. It is difficult in nature. But as a friend to friend, I would ask you that you should get yourself a good friend. A friend in I would say in the form of a mentor. That mentor will help you pat your back when you do well, scold you when you do bad and make you answer for your mistakes. That will help you to plan your journey properly, to understand that what should I do and what should I don't do. What are the do's and don'ts of this journey? That is what he has done, what the mistakes all the people have done, what his experience has been about failures and about successes. That is why mentorship is there. And for more contact details, if you want to, you can contact me also, you can contact us on this Telegram channel. You can fill this Google form which will show up after this, after you scan this QR code. Once you scan this QR code, you will get a Google form and that will lead you to mentorship. So that is from my side. That will be one thing which will be in addition to your this YouTube series. Further, let's begin with the discussion. As we discuss development, we all know that development is a bit different than growth. But is it really, is that a stark difference, a watertight compartmentalization between development and growth? Is it actually that growth is something else and development is something else, or growth is a subset of development? We would see that in GDP, we discussed about the growth in numbers. Suppose, as I say, that if my country starts producing only defense products, or my country starts producing electricity with coal or thermal power plants, what would happen to my country, or what would happen to this world at large? What would happen is we will be questioned with environmental sustainability. We will have a question that are we actually producing guns, machine guns or tanks or missiles, and we are not providing for people who are hungry, who are not being fed properly. We will have a population which will be malnourished. We will have a population which will be unhealthy. And there will be high death rate. If we do not spend on healthcare, there will be high death rate. If we do not spend on providing better nutrition, there will be less. I would say that the population in turn will be fragile. People who are growing will be less nourished. They will be having a health which is fragile enough, and they won't be producing more. There will be less birth rate also. High birth rate or less birth rate and high death rate. This all you might have read about it if earlier in the Nordstein-Thompson's curve, or the theory given by Nordstein-Thompson, and we will be dealing with it when we discuss the demography, that how the nation's demography actually works, how it actually starts, why the nation starts with high birth rate and high death rate, and then how to stabilize population. That is a discussion to be discussed later. We should understand that even if crime is rising in an economy, GDP will still increase. That is, it will be increased by what? By spending more on security purposes. We will be installing more CCTV cameras. That is why that will lead to production of more CCTV cameras. If there is more production of CCTV cameras, that what will happen is this industry will start booming. Once this industry starts booming, it will generate employment. But is it actually leading to development of anyone? That is the problem. Second, it will inflate the numbers in GDP, but will it actually increase development? No, there will be no security of life. There will be no right to life which will be enjoyed by everyone. Even if there is right to life constitutionally, but in actual or in practical thing, it won't be there. Second, environmental disasters would be more. The oil spills will increase GDP twice. Once when polluting occurs, another during the cleanup operations. Now, this is something which is funny. I would say, first we started with oil exploration. Second, we started to transport this oil, that is transportation of this oil. Transportation of crude oil from Saudi Arabia or from Gulf countries to India. Once we are transporting it, oil spill happens and then we clean it up. Clean up the oil spill. So what will happen? It will increase the GDP twice. How? Once when the pollution occurs. First, when the pollution occurs, it will increase the GDP again. That is when the oil exploration happens. When you explore oil, when you extract it, when you mine or when you refine it, when you sell it, when you use it, it will all generate electricity, it will generate mobility, it will be used in transport, it will increase the, I would say, GDP. Second, the transportation cost of it will lead to increase in the transportation economy. Third, after the oil spill, there will be cleanup process. This oil spill has to be cleaned, whether using azotobacter or whether using any other method, or whether collecting the oil, setting it on fire, anything you do, it will lead to what? Again, employment of resources in terms of man, labor or money. This will again lead to increase in the numbers of GDP. So thereby, GDP may grow, but is it actually leading to directly, or is it directly leading to what? Growth in, is it directly leading to growth in development? That is something which is to be discussed. Pandemic years, the COVID-19 masks, they were increased, the sale of masks was increased. This added to GDP despite representing the crisis. AI displacement, as you might see that ChatGPT will boost the productivity and increase GDP, but it may question the employment. As you might have read if you are reading newspapers continuously, in this year only 25-26, or I would say in the first 3 quarters of this year, we have witnessed that every day around 500 people lost their job because of AI. Now that is how economy changes, that is how we need to understand economy, that is how we need to understand development. Understood? Now beyond GDP, what we need to understand that there are multiple other things which should be discussed to understand that leaving the numbers aside, leaving the growth numbers aside, despite of being that our GDP has grown to 3 trillion, 4 trillion, 10 trillion, we should understand that there is another dimension of it, that is development. For this development, we need to measure the development. Then only we will understand that what actually is developing. What are we doing? Because in GDP, we calculated GDP in terms of market price, basic price, factor cost, taxation, indirect taxes, subsidies. We calculated all of it. That is what gave us the numbers we are increasing. However, what we need to understand is, beyond GDP, we need to see what development humans are doing. What is inequality doing among us? How much are we increasing in terms of social progress? So thereby, economists have developed multiple indices, whether that is Human Development Index, Inequality Adjusted Human Development Index, social progress index, happiness report, gross national happiness, green GDP. We will discuss them all in this lecture. Starting with human development index. GDP might talk about what and how is economy doing, but human development index will talk about how are people doing. So thereby it emphasizes on capabilities and criteria for assessing development, not economic growth alone. Rather, it talks about development and growth both. I wouldn't say that explicitly, but implicitly it is about development. So development has a subset of, or the growth is a subset of development. Now moving further, there are three pillars of human development index. Human development index, three pillars to it. First is long and healthy life, longevity, knowledge and standard of living. Now understand, what we do in this index or in this index, human development index, we mention or measure long and healthy life, that is the first dimension. Second is knowledge, we measure the standard of living. Now how to measure it? There should be an indicator to it, there should be a parameter to it, that how should we measure it. First we see life expectancy at birth, and once we see that, for example, in India currently we have a life expectancy of 70 or 72 years, say for example, this will lead to life expectancy index of all the countries. Knowledge will be measured in two terms. One is expected years of schooling, that if a child is born, he is of 2 years, 3 years or 4 years or 5 years age, now how many years of schooling is expected that he will go through. For example, in some societies, students have a high dropout rate in 10th class, 8th class, 12th class. That is how we decide how many years are expected to be or that this person will go for education. Mean years of schooling means that at the age of 25, how many years has he actually spent in the schooling, in college, school, high school or any other. This gives us the education index. And then standard of living will be measured as per the gross national income, but at purchasing power parity. This will give us the gross national income index. Now all these three indices 1, 2 and 3 will be merged together, and then we will form the human development index. Clear? Now remember that if there is a score of 0.550, it means this country has low human development index. If it is less than from 0.550 to 0.699, it is medium human development, and if it is more than 700 to 799, it is high human development index, and if it is more than 0.800, 0.8, it is high human development, very high human development. Now this score is derived out of all these indices and then human development index, and this takes into care, or this is derived out of the weighted average method. We don't need to go into the details of the calculation of this. We must remember its indicators, its dimensions and how this method emerged. Now once we go through this, we need to understand that recently there was a human development report which was published in 2025. So human development report 2025, we will go through this because our book mentions about this. So I have validated it with some more aspects. If we understand human development index, then only can we answer the inequality adjusted human development index. And in UPSC 2025 means inequality adjusted Human Development Index was asked. So thereby it is important for us to make sure that we understand both of them. Maybe it might be asked in the next prelims. So India's Human Development Index or India's human development journey till now has been, I would say, it has been fairly good enough, because we have increased, or we have, I would say, consistently for multiple decades, we improved on our ranks, and recently our rank in this report is 130. So for prelims it is important that India rose from to 130th place in 2025 Human Development Report. HDI value is now 0.685. So that is why we are classified as medium human development country, approaching high development threshold of 0.700, and once we cross 0.700, it means that we will be classified as high human development country, but that may take some time. Improvements are driven by enhanced education, per capita income growth, and highest ever life expectancy. Currently we have highest ever life expectancy which we ever had in history. So India remains in medium human development category, but is steadily approaching the threshold for high human development. So our score currently stands at 0.685, that is India's Human Development Index. Second, Iceland, which is very high development, or which has very high human development, its score is 0.972. It is at the rank 1. Clear? Now, in India also and in other regions, India has been performing better than some countries, but worse than some countries. Like countries which are ranking above India in our neighborhood: China, Sri Lanka and Bhutan. Understood? Their rank is better than India. While as India's, their rank is lesser than India, while as the countries which are ranking below India, it is Nepal, Myanmar and Pakistan. They are better than India and they are worse than India. So their rank is 145, 150 and 168. Bangladesh, which was 130th, is on par with India in terms of regional human development index ranking. Clear? In human development index, we discussed about 3 parameters. One was life, long and healthy life. Second is knowledge, and third is a decent standard of living. Now, we have improved on all of them. So we will see them one by one, that how in 2025 report, how have we actually performed in this. In terms of life expectancy, our life expectancy increased from 58.6 years, which was back then in 1990s, to 72 years currently in 2023. Clear? So with life expectancy, India has reached its highest ever life expectancy in 2023. Why did this happen and how come did we reach here? Because of government schemes like National Health Mission, Ayushman Bharat. Ayushman Bharat, it is the universal health coverage initiative. It provides insurance, health insurance of 5 lakh rupees to all the families, 10 lakh families of India. Further, Janani Suraksha Yojana, which is about the maternal health support. Under this scheme, Janani Suraksha Yojana, government wants institutional deliveries so that both maternal mortality and infant mortality gets decreased, or child mortality per se gets decreased. Under this scheme, the mother is given some incentives, and all the costs, whether of the travel from home to a hospital and then from hospital to back home, along with the medical expenses and some cash incentives, are given for institutional deliveries. Further, Poshan Abhiyan. Poshan Abhiyan is for nutrition and wellness program. Under this, children, or I would say our young kids who are in their adolescence age, or adolescent girls, or the pregnant woman and lactating woman, they are being provided with nutritious food in Anganwadi centers and in other centers, ICDS centers. Clear? Further, so that is how we increased our life expectancy. Tomorrow when you are asked in an exam that how should India increase its ranking in Human Development Index, how should India travel its journey from medium human development to high or very high Human Development Index, that is how you answer. You write about these initiatives which have helped us to increase our rank in these indices. Clear? Now, in terms of education, India in 1990 had an overall 8.2 years of expected schooling in 1990, but currently our expected schooling or years of schooling is 13 years of schooling. It means when a child is born or when a child is about to receive education or start his education, it is I would say on an average every child in India goes through 13 years of schooling in his life. Clear? How did this happen? In 2009 we brought Right to Education Act, and in 2020 National Education Policy was launched. In the comment sections I want you to answer which constitutional amendment made right to education a fundamental right. Article 21A. One more thing, initiatives like Right to Education Act 2009, National Education Policy 2020, Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan have improved access through quality learning outcomes which still require attention. Further, along with this, we have PM Shri Yojana, in which we are developing model schools, around 14,500 model schools across India, under which the Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan schemes funds are being given. Clear? That is how we increase our education part. Third indicator, which is talking about the standard of living. This talks about economic growth and poverty reduction. India, once it decreases the poverty, it means the standard of living of people is increasing. One more thing, that if the real income of people is increasing, this only determines, or this determines, if the real income is increasing, this determines that people are actually earning more. If the real income is increasing, not the nominal income or not the per capita income. Per capita income in terms of purchasing power parity, if it is increasing, then it means somehow near to close people are earning more. Clear? So that is why gross national income per capita, GNI per capita, as per purchasing power parity has increased up from $2,167 rupees to 9,046 rupees. Around 135 million people have escaped the poverty from 1516 to 1921. However, there happened to be COVID, due to which multiple, I would say, a lot of people who were out of the poverty, around 10 to 12% of the people who were out of poverty were drawn back into the poverty. India's gross national income per capita has increased over 4 folds based on 2021 purchasing power parity rate, and 135 million people have escaped the poverty line. Now, once I discussed in this lecture only, just a minute back, that artificial intelligence is changing the dynamics of employment. Artificial intelligence is actually leading to what? It is replacing the humans, and the chatbots, I would say the voicemails, or I would say the IVR calls are now being responded by the AI chatbots, the I would say AI assistants. Rather, earlier, I would say 5 or 10 years back, we used to hire people because India was a BPO industry, our economy was led by services, and we were hiring people to answer these customer support, or to answer the calls as a customer support executives. Now, this has changed. Content creation has changed. Not only that, but filmmaking. picture or I would say photography. These are some sectors which are changing. With this artificial intelligence, even the dynamics of development are also changing. India, which is emerging as an AI leader, if we see, around 20% of AI researchers are staying in India, and around 1% of the people are saying that we have, or 1% of the population of India, or the people who are using artificial intelligence tools, they are saying that we are skilling ourselves with AI. Now, this upskilling, or I would say learning with AI, adapting AI, or I would like to hereby narrate a story. It goes back to Industrial Revolution. When Industrial Revolution came, there was a similar argument back then that with the coming of industries, with the coming of wheel, engine, steam engine, power looms, the jobs which were being done by hand, which were done by labor, are now replaced. Machines are replacing labor. That means there will be massive unemployment. Similarly, when AI is replacing humans in chatbots, AI voice calls, IVR calls, it means that these skills are now to be transferred to AI, led by machine, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it will not create jobs. AI may replace humans, but it doesn't mean there will be no more jobs. Jobs will be there. The only thing to do is upskilling, and upskilling is a part of development. Now, hereby, for the next 4 to 5 slides, we will be discussing how India can leverage artificial intelligence for its development, because this might be a theme in upcoming mains. Understood? This is also something which is not discussed in the book. Challenges which are holding India back, because this was discussed across multiple editorials in this year newspapers only. Inequality reduces the Human Development Index by 30%, which is there in India. Inequality will be talking about the Inequality Adjustment Human Development Index, Inequality Adjusted Human Development Index in a while. One of the highest losses in the region reflects deep disparities and opportunities. There are gender disparities which persist in India, that we have gender inequality. The 80% of women who are economically active are actually involved into agriculture. We have lesser the female labor force participation rate than the male labor force participation rate. Female labor force participation rate stands at only 41.7%, and political representation continues to lag. We have very few people who are, or we have very few women who are actually representing in parliament. So, there was 106th Constitutional Amendment Act which reserved 1/3 of legislative seats for women. Women's reservation in legislatures or in parliament and state assembly was ensured or was brought in by 106th Constitutional Amendment Act, Women Reservation Bill. Now, UPSC asked a question on this also in prelims 24, sorry. Prelims 2024, there was a question on Women Reservation Bill and its provisions. So, thereby you should prepare yourselves with 106th Constitutional Amendment Act. Clear? So, thereby artificial intelligence may boost the productivity and will eventually lead to a boost in economy also. For example, at the global level, about AI's productivity, 70% of the population is optimistic that AI will boost the productivity. Like back then, we used to have all the manual labor, we used to do all the production through manual labor, and with the introduction of machines, the productivity increased, the production increased, more number of goods were produced. Similarly, when AI comes in, more number of goods will be produced. It will increase the productivity of people only. Around 33.8 lakh crore rupees are expected to be increased into our economy by 2030 as per Google's report. However, it will lead to 20% of the GDP contribution also. So the target is that AI is expected to help India reach $1 trillion digital economy target by 2028. So our digital economy, other than the rest of the production, our digital production would be around $1 trillion by 2028. That is how AI is revolutionizing, AI is increasing productivity in economy. Further, we need to understand how it is helping us in healthcare. It enhances the diagnostics, it enhances accuracy, detecting the disease earlier, trying to develop more medicines, or I would say patient specific medicines. It streamlines operations, clinical workflows and monitoring the telemedicine. Medical education also has been revolutionized by the artificial intelligence. Clear? AI is transforming education also. You might have or you might have not learned about, recently there was a case study from 2 panchayats of Tamil Nadu, in which the kids who were 2-year, 3-year or 5-year old, they were exposed to artificial intelligence, or they were instructed with the education through AI chatbots. And the surprise after that was that after 2 or 3 months of education and after 2 or 3 months of interactive learning with smart boards and with the touch, all the kids or the 2-year, 3-year kids were able to do those tasks which actually a grown-up kid of 6 or 8 years cannot do, like spotting an elephant, spotting a crocodile, or making balloons, making drawings. This all was possible with those kids when they were exposed to AI learning. That is how AI education will transform us. It will help us with the real-time support, like AI tutors can help you, explain you things real time, which otherwise manually teachers were not doing or are less capable of doing that, because every time a teacher cannot address every student at every moment of time. Educators can identify learning gaps and monitor students' development more effectively. Clear? AI can help us in governance also, because it will help us in detecting frauds better. It can be multilingual in nature, and the service delivery can increase because of the linguistic barriers, whether in terms of Hindi or English. India being a multicultural nation or multilinguistic nation, or I would say in our nation, languages change every few kilometers. So thereby AI can provide us with that governance in which every language can be learned by AI, and every language, every English word can be translated into regional languages, and the governance can reach really the doorsteps. Understood? So further, it can also help us in ensuring gender equality. How? Political representation can increase by 106th Constitutional Amendment Act. Economic empowerment, it can expand access to PM Mudra Yojana, Stand Up India, digital freelancing platforms. These are the measures which we can do in ensuring gender equality. STEM participation can be increased to promote women in the science, technology, maths, Vigyan Jyoti, flexible jobs will create support for this. Legal reforms can be brought in, like the Nirbhaya Fund and one-stop centers, which will enforce laws against the gender bias nature. That was about AI, and these are furthermore steps which can be brought in for increasing the developmental aspect of India. Understood? Clear? Tackling the rising inequality, how we can decrease the inequality in India. First, like the schemes, Mahatma Gandhi, the MG Narega scheme, which actually provided employment of 100 days to all the people, all the rural people, guaranteed 100 days employment, and this is now being reformed to, this was recently brought in, and the number of days of employment will be given 125 days of guaranteed employment. Further, we have employment, Prime Minister's Employment Generation Program, Jan Dhan Yojana for financial inclusion, and long-term strategies. Now, this all will help us to increase our score at Gini coefficient. Now, what is Gini coefficient and what is Lorentz curve? And Lorentz curve and Gini coefficient we will be discussing in the upcoming lectures. Clear? Further, we need to improve our health education. How to improve our health education? Not only investing in AI, but also increasing the funding and prioritizing universal health care, prioritizing universal access to nutrition. teacher training and curriculum, we can improvise on teacher training and education curriculum as we have improvised in National Education Policy 2020. Further, tech-enabled education, as I gave you the example just now about the case study of children and in the Tamil Nadu panchayats. So thereby we can include technology in schools, in colleges and in high schools so that our education gets tech savvy. Learning AI from or leveraging AI for inclusion, how we can include more and more people, sabka saath, sabka vikas, how can we help all the people to come under the net of development. First, e-health monitoring, electronically health monitoring, or I would say AI enabled health monitoring. E-learning, agricultural advisories with ethical governance. Job creation, it will focus on manufacturing, green economy, infrastructure with skilling programs. Third, digital and financial inclusion. This will enhance through Jan Dhan Yojana, UPI, digital literacy campaigns. Now these are the points which you can directly use in your means. In this series, we have completed the third chapter's first part, that is Human Development Index. And after that, we will be moving further into Inequality Adjusted Human Development Index, Planetary Pressures Index and multiple other indices. Why so? Because we are reading about the development part in economy, and economy comprises of growth and development both. So in today's lecture, we will be again going to the developmental part of economics. In the past lectures, you all have been very much consistent, and I want all of you to complete this book with me so that we develop, I would say, an understanding of the subject much more better, or I would say much more comparatively, if we talk about much more better than all the other students who are in your competition. Because we have seen over the period, today also I was talking to a student of mine, and actually no student, or I would say rather a very few students actually read some books in UPSC, and that is basically the reason, because they do not try to grasp the content from the books. They do not try to even clear their concepts. Rather, what students do is they usually tend to mug up whatever is being said or delivered to them, whether through lectures, notes or crisp notes of toppers or any other I would say short material. So instead of doing that, we all are mature enough and we all would be called wise enough if we complete this book properly. And in this lecture series, we are doing one more thing, which is very much crucial for this lecture series. Along with this book, we are doing some value addition also. And in this book also, we are doing that part only which is important for UPSC. Does that mean that this book contains some of the parts which are not important for UPSC? No. It contains explanations to the core concepts. And in these explanations, I actually smoothen and try to give you those explanations in crisp manner, which helps you to understand and make it set inside your mind, which you can use directly in your exam. That is why these videos are important along with the book. So now let's move further and understand that if you still are facing any issues with regard to UPSC or preparation, you can scan this QR code directly, get yourself a free mentorship session and get your preparation aligned with the right mentors of Sriram's IAS, that too without any cost. Clear? Moving further, these are the contact details in which you can ping me up if you have any issues. This is our Telegram channel. You can scan this code, join the Telegram channel, and once you join this Telegram channel, you can find all our PDFs, questions, daily, weekly, monthly, current affairs over there. Clear? Now, let's move further into the discussion part. The first index today, which we will be taking care of, will be the Inequality Adjusted Human Development Index, UPSC 2025 Mains. UPSC Mains 2025. Had one particular question on this topic, that is Inequality Adjusted Human Development Index, HDI. So what is this? Human Development Index, as we know, talks about the health, education and standard of living. If we understand that, now what does this inequality adjustment means? Basically, we all know that there is economic inequality in terms of income, in terms of wealth. And if we talk about socio-economic, or if we talk about socio-cultural inequality, or the inequality in terms of skills, education, that is something which is a bit different than this. However, our human development, when we talk about economic inequality, that is in terms of income. But when we talk about developmental inequality, it comprises of all, whether that is inequality in health, inequality in the living standards, whether that is inequality in terms of education. The people from poorer sections have, or they do tend to have, lesser number of years in terms of education. Or if I talk about this, the people from lower sections, they have less access to healthcare facilities. That is why we need to understand that this Human Development Index must be seen through the prism or seen through the lenses of inequality also. Because when we talk about growth, we witnessed that there is inequality in growth. We should also understand that there is inequality in development also. Clear? So that is why this index comes in place, and that is why UPSC also asked a question about this. If we talk about the last inequality adjusted human development index, this index was the summary measure of all the key dimensions. What are the dimensions? First, long and healthy life, good education, decent standard of living, adjusted for inequalities in these dimensions. Clear? So that is inequality adjusted human development index. So if you see over here, Burundi, that has an income of just I guess around $1,000. And if we talk about the North American countries or Belgium, it has a per capita income of around $1 lakh. That is where economic inequality or income inequality comes in place. It uses data from UNDP, Human Development Report, Eurostats, OECD, IMF and World Bank data. This all data of 2025 was used to develop this index. Clear? Now, remember one more thing, that this index is actually formed by combining all the three aspects of human development index. Like, we compare, first of all, do you remember that we read about human development index, and in that we used to develop three indexes. First is the long and healthy life index, and now this index will be adjusted with inequality, and then the education and of living. All of them will be adjusted to inequality, and then three more indices will be formed, that is inequality adjusted health index, inequality adjusted education index and inequality adjusted standard of living index, and then the HDI will be formed. Clear? Do remember this. We will take this again once we discuss the UPSC PYQs, and in those PYQs, or you can do one more thing, the main channel of Sriram IAS, on that I have discussed the UPSC 2025 mains paper. All the questions of economy were discussed in that video. You can search for that also. Moving further, we have one more index to discuss, that is wealth adjusted human development index. First was income, now it is development, and now it is wealth adjusted human development index. Now how do we adjust wealth? Because in a nation we have natural capital, produced capital and human capital also. This is the comprehensive wealth of the whole nation, and this index particularly talks about the linkage between capital and the outcomes of capital, that how development and wealth are linked to each other. That is the point of this index. Clear? Now, if you talk about the countries like Europe, North America and Australia, where these are higher. The natural capital is high, they have more produced capital, and their humans have better skills. Their human capital is higher in nature. They have more wealth. They have more wealth and they have better human development. You will see similar countries in human development and similar countries in comprehensive wealth are in the topmost parameters. Clear? So there is an unexplored link between wealth and human development. Better the wealth, better the development of a nation would be there. Moving to the next index, it is the planetary pressure adjusted index. Now what is the planetary pressure adjusted human development index? That in terms of development, if you build schools, roads, infrastructure, or if you give skills to your people, this comes with what the cost or environmental cost to it. And if you adjust your human development index to the pressure which it is creating on the planet, that is the footprint, whether that is material footprint or whether that is CO2 footprint. All the development of your population, your demography costs something to environment, and that cost when adjusted to human development index decreases the score of human development index. But in terms of India, it has been positive. Our HDI, or this planetary pressure human development index, has been better than HDI. Why so? Because we have been environmentally sensitive. Our policies and environmental movements have been there. Whether that is CHIPCO movement or APICO movement or other environmental movements, whether that is the recently introduced at the G20 Mission Life, G20 summit, lastly which was held by India, Mission Life, that also is one of the part of our environmental policies. Clear? One thing which you need to remember, that since the Anthropocene era, what is Anthropocene era? It is that time when humans started to change the climate. Clear? The proposed geographical or geological epoch defined by significant human impact on Earth's geology and ecosystems. This marked the climate change, pollution and biodiversity loss. Planetary pressure adjusted human development index modifies the human development index, accounting what? First, CO2 emissions. Per capita, per person, how much CO2 is being emitted by a person to environment which is creating or leading to a climate change or global warming, and material footprint per capita. This measures the excessive planetary pressure which we are creating on the planet. Further, India's achievement has been good because our achievements have been in this planetary pressure human development index. Now, remember how is it derived? How is this index made? First of all, it is created by multiplying human development index by an adjustment factor. What is this adjustment factor? If you see here, human development index, the score which we have got on HDI, like 0.68, which we got this year, that is multiplied by an adjustment factor of planetary pressures. How is this created? What is this factor? How do we multiply it with this? We need to derive this factor. How will we derive this factor? We will add two things, and that will be material footprint per capita, CO2 footprint per capita. That how much CO2 are we emitting and how much material are we consuming out of this planet. These two will be added and their arithmetic mean will be derived, and then we will get this factor. Product of these two will be this planetary adjusted human development index. Clear? 0 would be good score and 1 would be lower score, or 1 would be better score, that is lower planetary pressures, and 0 would be lesser score. The more closer to 0 we are, that means that our pressure towards planet will be more. Clear? More than 50 countries drop from even very high human development index to lower levels when they are adjusted to planetary pressures, because the development comes at the cost, or the growth and development both come at the cost of environmental damage. Clear? Now, moving to next index, which is most important index, it talks about the gross happiness index. What is this gross happiness index? This was developed by the Bhutan's king Jigme Singye Wangchuk. Now, what led him to develop this index was to understand that there is cultural linkage to development. Culture is somehow linked to development. And if we understand culture and linkage between development and culture, then we will see that societies progress, societies develop, they build that mutual trust, that ethos in the society that helps entire society to be inclusively growing. All the society will grow together. That is what was the last slide in the previous lecture. In the previous lecture, we completed with this slide that inclusion is not necessity, or it is the main thing which should be introduced or which should be pursued upon. Clear? This Bhutan's king who developed the Gross National Happiness Index, this defines life in holistic terms. How? Because it talks about sustainable development, equitable and sustainable socio-economic progress of all. That is where everyone's equity is included. Good governance. There should be effective and transparent leadership. It talks about environmental conservation and cultural values, preservation and promotion of cultural values. 4 indicators, and it has 9 domains, 9 dimensions which it accounts for. Likewise, we used to account for growth in terms of GDP and factor cost and market price or inflation or deflator. Similarly, development or human, or I would say gross happiness index, talks about 9 elements. What are these? First is psychological well-being. How much mental stress is there, how much psychologically wise or free that population is. Time use. If you remember, this year also there was a survey conducted about time use survey. This time use survey gives us the idea that where the population, whether male and female, where are they spending their time? Where are they spending their time? Is that time being spent in household chores or in economic activity? That talks about that how much contribution of females and males is there in household or unpaid care or paid care. I have taken a video on that also. We can find it in the main channel. One more thing, community vitality. How much vital is that community? How much developed is that community? How much social cohesion is there in that community? Health. What are the parameters of health? Birth rate, infant mortality rate, child mortality rate, maternal mortality rate or life expectancy. These are the parameters of health. Cultural diversity, ecological resilience, how much better is our environment? Understood? Education. As you remember, Human Development Index uses education. What? Expected years of schooling and average years of schooling. Good governance. And again, the last thing, living standards. What does that mean? What type of things are we using? Is our home, or is everyone having a home? Is everyone having food? Is everyone having clean fuel? That is what all of this living standards will talk about. Clear? Assets, what kind of assets we have. These are the 9 domains of gross national happiness and we must remember them. Clear? Now, this gross national happiness index is formed using an Alkire-Foster method. What is Alkire-Foster method? Alkire-Foster method talks about to measure things beyond poverty. That it is not just that we are having an income of 200 rupees a day or 70 rupees or 32 rupees a day, which means that now this person is not poor. Based on income, if the poverty is defined based on income, and if we talk about poverty or multidimensional poverty, if we consider only one method of poverty, that does not mean this person is not developed. Development is not just about income, or it is not just about poverty. We should go beyond that. What is beyond poverty? That is these 9 domains. All of these. Further, it considers health, education and living standards. Clear? These are the 3 methods or 3 points, domains, dimensions which we use beyond poverty to explain that what development should consist of. First, identifying the deprivations. If the population does not have clean water, they do not have access to food, shelter. If there are multiple deprivations, like they are deprived of health, they are deprived of education, they are deprived of food, they are deprived of shelter, that will be taken into account. Next, they set the poverty line threshold for all of these, considering all of these, and then this index creates numbers showing the poverty or the extent of poverty in the community. Clear? That is Alkire-Foster method. Gross Happiness Index inspired actually the World Happiness Report, and World Happiness Report is not published by Bhutan but an organization at international level. This was inspired by Bhutan's Gross National Happiness Index, and it is used globally, and all the respondent rates have increased. Their happiness is scaled from 0 to 10 across more than 150 countries. It uses 6 parameters: per capita income, real per capita income, whatever per capita income is there; life expectancy, for example in India we have 72; freedom to make life choices. These indicators must be remembered. UPSC does ask these indicators. Trust and social support in the society, generosity in the society, and perceptions of corruption. How much corruption could be there? And in this index, or perception of corruption index, India has been lagging behind. World's happiest countries: first Finland, Denmark, Iceland, and Sweden. If you see, there is community, strong social support, dominance, this Finland continues dominance, and personal freedom is there in Sweden, which tend to make them world's most happy countries. Clear? One more thing which you need to remember. In the latest World Happiness Report 2025, we saw that Finland in the 8th consecutive year, consecutively, steadily for the past 8 years, Finland is at rank 1. Then Denmark, Iceland, and Sweden, remember the ranks from 1 to 4. India's rank was 118th. Remember the rank? It was improved from 126 to 118 in 2024. The theme of 2025 was caring and sharing. World Happiness Day is on March 20. World Happiness Day is on March 20. South Asian ranking, if we see about South Asia, Nepal is at 92, Pakistan 109, Myanmar 126, Sri Lanka 133, Bangladesh 134. India is at 118th, which is less than Nepal and Pakistan. Clear? Now, remember the determinants of true happiness. How can we determine true happiness? First is trust, social connections, shared meals, freedom, generosity, and communal kindness. These are the 6 parameters which can be used to understand the world's happiness, to understand that how people can be really happy in the world, how we can actually determine or define happiness in the world. Clear? So thereby, World Happiness Report actually reveals the trust, social connections, shared meals, and other parameters of social cohesion. Clear with this? Next, India's happiness challenge. Now this is something apart, which is I would say value addition, apart from the book. Clear? Which I usually try to give you updated information. 2025, the data and other things which were released in 2025, indices which were released in 2025, I have inculcated all of them in this video lectures. India improved to 118th position from 124 into 2024, but still ranks behind. The conflict affected areas like Palestine and Ukraine are better than India, performing better than in India. Pakistan and Nepal are performing better than in India in terms of happiness. Despite all of the economic progress which India has, being the 4th largest economy of the world, still we have problems with respect to happiness. And if we talk about states, in India, Madhya Pradesh is the first state to establish Anand Department. Remember this? Anand Department, that is happiness department, with members from culture, society, psychology, and academia. This was created to ensure that festivals featuring music, dance, singing, drama, sports, and other things to increase the happiness of people should be inculcated. Clear? Andhra Pradesh is the second state to establish happiness departments, following Madhya Pradesh's pioneer model. Plus, one more thing which you need to remember, Delhi was one of such UTs, or particularly I would say Delhi was one of such governments where happiness classes were introduced. Clear? Anand clubs, what are these? These are community self-help groups where skills for living happy life are taught among the members. Now, this part will be important for your essay writing and for your social justice paper also, along with economy. Clear? Now, social progress index. What is social progress index? This index actually measures the society's capacity to meet basic needs, enhance quality of life, and create conditions for everyone to reach their full potential. If everyone can reach their full potential, remember the concept of potential GDP. What was potential GDP? It was about that how we can reach that number that we can achieve by utilizing all our resources. If we utilize all our resources, if we utilize all our potential, I will give you an example, very simple example. In, I would say, current day India, we have all our private organizations, private companies, private enterprises working. All of them and the people are working at a capacity of 75%. Understood? So that is the production capacity. If we increase it to 80% and if we maintain a growth rate of 7.8%, understood? Then only can we achieve the status of Viksit Bharat or developed nation by 2047. That is how productivity or that is how capacity utilization helps. That is the actual potential. That we are not utilizing 100%, we are not working at 100% potential, but 80% can help us to increase the productivity and get us the tag of developed nation by 2047. Similarly, over here, you need to understand that people have capabilities to utilize them and then only they can progress further. They can use or meet their basic needs, enhance the quality of life, create conditions for everyone to reach their full potential. How should we create it? It should be created by government. It should be created by state. How will state create it? It is based on the writings of Amartya Sen, who argues for capacity building. Joseph Stiglitz, who asks that there is a role to state. First of all, we need to understand what are the basic needs of humanity. Basic needs are nutrition. We have malnourished demography. Medical care, we still have a good death rate. Water, sanitation, shelter, personal safety. I would say majority of the cities in India have polluted water. Still people living in Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh face difficulties in ensuring they are not having clean or I would say clean sanitized water, or I would say their health conditions in the areas, slum areas, in the I would say the areas of Dharavi, Mumbai, they are inhumane in nature. So that is where the role of state comes in place. Foundations of well-being, access to knowledge, information, communication, healthcare, environmental quality, opportunities for personal rights, freedom, inclusiveness and access to advanced level education. This should be provided. This should be provided by the state for all the people. Further, moving further, what is the social progress index? What does it measure? It measures the outcomes, not the outputs. First is traditional approach. Number of doctors which are produced by the country. Hospitals which are built by the country. Healthcare spendings, how much healthcare are they spending, how much percentage of GDP, like it was argued in COVID times that 2.5% of the GDP should be spent on healthcare. Further, this approach talks about actual health outcomes, quality of life which is achieved and developmental results. That is what social progress index talk about. India's social progress index, if we talk about India's social progress index, it was created in 22-23. by the Institute for Competitiveness, India, and the Social Progress Imperative, which is from USA. They submitted their report to Prime Minister's Economic Advisor Council in 2022. According to this Social Progress Index, 89 state indicators were used for being comprehensive in nature. 89 indicators were used at state level, 49 district indicators were used for granular assessment, and 6 progress tiers were used from high to very low. Now, once all of this data was used, then only we got the social progress index, that how much progress in terms of actual health, in terms of life, quality of life in terms of developmental metrics has been achieved in India. Clear? Understood? Next is Genuine Progress Index. This index talks about the measures of well-being through comprehensive assessment of economic, social and environmental development for sustainable planning. For example, when the pollution occurs, GDP does increase twice. Simple. Do you understand this? First, we lately discussed an example that first of all understand, if the oil spill happens, if it is mentioned over here, no, it is not about oil spills. Last example which we discussed was about oil spill. I told you that first of all, it was the mining of oil, then refinery, then transport, then oil spill, then cleaning of oil spill, and all of this includes what? That there is pollution. According to this, the first pollution was there when we used methods of transport, when we used it in refineries, when we produced the oil and used it in cars or anywhere else or in industries. That was the first form of pollution. Second, when the accident of oil spill happened, when this oil spilled over all the ocean or somewhere else, this has to be cleaned also in order to save the marine life from hypoxia. Once this spill was, I would say cleaned, once the oil was cleaned, whether using azotobacter or any other method of oil cleaning, at that point of time, both these activities generated economic value, and once the economic value was generated, it means that GDP was increased. The GDP was increased, but at what cost? At a production of zero. Say we I would say refined the oil, we extracted the crude oil from you would say below the earth, that should be counted as production, but that oil spilled. Now that oil is of no use. Even we have to incur an expenditure to clean it, but GDP got increased. Why? Because of the production and loss both. Because of the production of this spill clearing industry, because of the production of this oil clearing industry, GDP got increased twice. But this is not genuinely a progress. This is something which we as metrics or numbers are increasing. So thereby, once during the generation and again during the cleanup, GPI accounts for initial pollution as a loss. The first pollution which we did was a loss, cancelled by control measures and deducts the health cost. Even we should understand that hereby our GDP should be decreased, not increased. Why? Because earlier, if we had a GDP of 100 rupees last year, this year we produced oil of worth 10 rupees. Then we spent 10 more rupees for oil spill clearance or clearing this oil spill. It means our GDP should be rupees 120, but this is wrong. First, because this is a fossil fuel, this is destruction of earth or this is destruction of resources of earth, we should rather, the GDP should be only 95 because there is loss because of the pollution which it creates. 10 rupees are added, not 95, 105. That 10 rupees are added, but 5 rupees are an environmental cost to it. So GDP increased by 105. Further, when we talk about health cost, post this, these 10 rupees should be decreased out of the GDP. It should come back to 95 rupees only. Clear? That is about Genuine Progress Index. What does Genuine Progress Index deduct? First, it deducts all the environmental cost, whether that is biodiversity loss, whether that is resource depletion, resource pollution impact, loss of farmland, wetlands, social costs like increase in crime rate, family breakdown, loss of leisure time, income inequality. If our economy is increasing based on the divorce rates, understand, I will give you a scenario that tomorrow, or I would say from 26 onwards, 2026, the financial year 26 onwards, if our economy starts to grow at 10% per year, year-on-year growth is 10% every year on an average, but our divorce rate is also increasing in terms of 10 or 15%. It means that this development is coming. on the cost of family breakdown. If this happens, is that a genuine progress? No. That is why we need to understand that these indices are formed only because of that. One more thing, OECD's Better Life Index. What does this index tell us about? It was adopted by OECD in 2011. It was based on the recommendations of a commission. The Commission on Measurement of Economic Performance and Social Progress. This commission was set up back then and it gave its report in 2009. It talks about 6 vital things. First was housing, environment, education. Second, it talks about income, jobs and community. Now, all of these parameters, if increased, then only we will see that, okay, now our economy or our people are at better life. Clear? One more thing, the dimensions of this index: civil engagement, the participation in democratic process, physical and mental well-being of people, life satisfaction, how much satisfied are people with their life, overall happiness levels, safety, murder and assault rates, work-life balance, time for personal life. These are main parameters of this OECD, that if you find time for yourself, if you find life satisfying, if you are really satisfied with your life, then only the life could be better. Clear with this? Now, next is green GDP. Again, this green GDP talks about what? All the environmental factors, whatever the consequences of development are there on environment, they are talked about in green GDP. We will go through green GDP and Das Gupta review committee in the next lecture, and till then I would ask all of you to read about the, because lastly I asked you about Earth Overshoot Day also. I asked about you multiple things, and I would suggest all of you to read about the inequality adjusted human development index and the UPSC PYQ which it asked in 2025. That PYQ must be answered, and if you write the answer, send that answer to me. I will see to that answer, I will get it evaluated, I will evaluate it myself, and then I will show you the answer, or I will discuss that answer in these videos. Clear with this? Further, the next video of this development chapter will be the last video of development chapter, and then we will start the fourth chapter of the book. Clear? Green GDP, and we have some more ideas to discuss: national capital accounting, natural capital accounting, Das Gupta review committee, and India's climate change initiatives, how India is greening its economy. That is why I am keeping this topic for next video, how India is moving for greener economy. One second. How India is ensuring just transition. Clear? You must also read about one more thing. The impact of transmission lines on birds. There are some Supreme Court judgments on this topic also, and those judgments are very much pertinent to be understood for UPSC. Hello and welcome to Sriram's IAS. In this series of Indian economy, we are discussing the Indian economy book by Sriram sir himself, chapter wise. And last lecture was about economic growth and development. We already have done 2 lectures on economic growth and development. This would be the last lecture about the chapter 3rd. In the last video, I asked you some of the questions, and these questions were about what is just transition, how India is taking over and talking about or transitioning towards a greener economy, what would be the impacts of transmission lines on different birds. Now, once we discuss all of this, we need to understand that there is environmental cost to development, and once we start developing and once we start that this development and growth should be sensible and sensitive towards the environmental costs, then there comes one more challenge, that if we are transitioning towards greener economy, we are again interacting with the environment. For example, there was recently a case with Great Indian Bustard in the states of Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh, and in this case what happened was that it was a challenge that Great Indian Bustard is actually facing problems in their flight from one place to another place due to transmission lines. In that case, it was the Rajat Singh case. Supreme Court actually talked about the just transition. What is just transition? That if you are developing electricity transmission lines in order to have cleaner electricity, you should not damage. In order to save the I would say the planet from I would say fossil fuels, we are transitioning towards electricity, but that electricity should not be at the cost of damaging the habitat of already or the flyways of birds, or whether you talk about the flamingos which turn the Sambar lake into pink color, or you talk about Great Indian Bustard, or you talk about any other bird or any other animal per se. For example, the Panna Tiger Reserve that was recently in news, and what was there? That the dam, or I would say the reservoir of water, was actually damaging the habitat, and that was challenging the mobility of tigers. Similarly, there are other issues also. So, in order to transition towards greener economy, in order to transition towards development, we should not damage already established pathways, corridors, or flyways of the I would say flora and fauna of the nation. Now, once we talk about this, there is one more concept to understand the green economy, that is green GDP. Before we go into this concept that what green GDP is, what are the environmental consequences of transitioning towards or developing greener growth, I would like to highlight that at Sriram's IES we provide you with mentorship, and also with that I would like to help and understand that all the students who are facing problems in these lectures or any other lecture or per se in the entire UPSC journey, or they are having problems in streamlining their time management or doing their daily chores, whatever the problem is, you can talk it out, discuss it with your mentor. They will help you in time management, stress management, psychological, and they will also help you in academics. They will also help you to target and strategize or draw the roadmap towards your next attempt. For that, what you need to do is, you just need to connect with us. This is the QR code for mentorship form. This is the QR code where you can connect with us on Telegram. Further, there are contact details in which you can connect with me also. So what is green GDP per se? It is the index of economic growth that factors into environmental consequences. For example, as I say that if we are developing an infrastructure, or I would say a roadway or a highway, and this highway is through a national park, we may add up capital into our GDP, but we must deduct, we must subtract the environmental cost caused due to this national park, because this will lead to what? I would say translocation of animals, or I would say this will damage their habitat, and if it damages their habitat, we need to understand that after that we need to incur costs. For example, lately we might be also knowing about the project Cheetah, the reintroduction of cheetahs from African continent to Indian subcontinent. Now that came at a cost, and that cost was borne by GDP of this, by economy of this nation. That cost, once it is incurred, that means we are subtracting the amount of that translocation. So that is how environmental consequences are actually done and calculated in this green GDP. So thereby, from the final value of goods and services, we will subtract the cost of ecological degradation and is deducted to arrive at green GDP. Clear with this? So basically there was in United Kingdom, there was a committee which was established under Parthasarathi Das Gupta, Professor Shri Partha Das Gupta, which was commissioned by UK government, and this was an independent research or assessment at global level. What they recommended was the Economics of Biodiversity 2021, which was the research paper, and they said that natural capital is not given its due place in the economics. So all the economists of the world or all the economists of the countries, they are not talking about or they are not calculating natural capital when it comes to GDP calculation. So thereby we should calculate natural capital, and once we calculate it, then only we can prevent the erosion of this natural capital. So annual subsidies given by all the governments globally cost around $6 trillion, and these subsidies basically are indirectly or directly leading to environmental destruction and degradation. So what they recommended was, they found that most governments are on unsustainable economic growth, whereby they are exploiting nature than protecting it. Thereby, they call for that we all should think, act and take measures for protection and enhancement of the prosperity of natural world. So how should we do this? They recommended that we should discourage the production and consumption through the policies, and we should change the prices and behaviors. We should enforce a set of standards for reuse, recycle, and basically this will further lead to circular economy. And there was one entire question on circular economy in UPSC prelims 2025. That what circular economy is, does it reduce, reuse, and the 4 R's of the economy, circular economy, if you know it, or the 5 R's of circular economy, if you know them properly, you could have answered the question. That was the main thing. And I would astonish you that before prelims, 10 days before prelims, I took an entire video of 15 minutes on circular economy, in which we discussed a case study, in which we discussed how circular economy is implemented, and straight question was asked in UPSC prelims. That is why when you have a know-how of current affairs, when you have a know-how of economy, when you have a know-how of subject, then you can target that, okay, this is the important news, this is what I should take care of, this is what I should note down, and then you will find those questions, you will find those topics in your exam. Moving further, India also adopted to natural capital accounting. Now we are accounting natural capital. As per Das Gupta committee, we should account for natural capital. We should calculate how much natural capital we have. These natural capital or natural resources include biodiversity, soil, water, air. If we have cleaner air, it means it is our capital. If we have cleaner water, it means it's our capital. We should calculate for it. Thereby, all the natural capital that supports one another, they should have the same importance as man-made capital in accounting. If we are calculating a building, we should also calculate land, because if this building is helping us to establish an office and a factory which produces, for example, rupees 10 lakh crore of or 1 lakh crore rupees of GDP, this land also helps us to establish this building, and further we can also use this land for agriculture, for settlement, for housing, for multiple other purposes. Therefore, we should develop measures and we should calculate national income, and this national income which does not otherwise represent the genuine growth, which is failing on representing or accounting for genuine growth, we should try to inculcate that genuine growth by including the natural capital. So how should we do this? India long back started in 2008, and we first of all adopted the National Biodiversity Action Plan. Once we adopted this National Biodiversity Action Plan, this highlights the importance of natural goods and services, value of ecosystem, which aims to incorporate the costs into national accounting of these natural capital, the cost of natural capital into national accounting. Then in 2010, there was this Nagoya Biodiversity Summit, which commonly is known as Nagoya Summit. India hereby declared that we will adopt the natural resource accounting. United Nations also decided on global partnership to mainstream the economic planning, that all the countries at global level should partner, collaborate and cooperate with each other, so that we do what? we do calculate this natural capital of land, because you must also remember that we have targets about land degradation, that there should be no land degradation. We have targets of having net zero emissions by 2070. Now, all of these targets should at least first start with calculating that how much cleaner air we have. If we have this much cleaner air, how to make sure that all of our air or all of our emissions into atmosphere should be nullified. That requires that we should calculate how much forests we have, how much carbon sinks we have, how much wealth do we have in terms of mangroves, in terms of coral reefs. That is how we should understand it. So in 2011, there was an expert group headed by Partha Das Gupta, which convened to examine the prospects of developing green national accounts. And in 2013, the expert group submitted its report on Green National Accounts Framework. And after this report, we currently have India's Green Growth Vision. What is this vision? India currently aspires for becoming Viksit Bharat, a developed world by 2047. Further, we also aspire that we should have net zero emissions by 2070. Now, these are the green growth targets of India. Further, we need our growth trajectory to prioritize the sustainable growth or sustainable development alongside the economic growth. For this, what we need to do is, first of all, we need to transit towards renewable energy. We need to increase the share of renewable energy in terms of solar electricity, wind powered electricity, and we should reduce the fossil fuel reliance. We should decrease the use of fossil fuels. We should increase the nuclear energy, wind energy, solar energy. That is why we have Pradhan Mantri Surya Ghar Yojana, which was asked in UPSC prelims. Clear? Second, green hydrogen. What is green hydrogen? We should invest in cleaner energies. And this green hydrogen was also asked by UPSC in prelims. We should invest in green steel, that is cleaner technologies, reducing carbon emissions, whether that is decreasing the emissions during the production of steel or whether that is recycling steel in terms of sponge iron. Further, India should also aspire for becoming greener in agriculture also, like and in day-to-day life. For example, India lately adopted or started promoting organic farming. Organic farming, Sikkim became the first state in the entire nation to become fully organic state. Then Lakshadweep also turned into organic. Recently, you must also remember that Sri Lanka entirely banned its fertilizers and mandated that all of the agriculture should be organic in nature. So, sustainable agriculture improves what? Soil health, conserving the water, reducing the chemical inputs. Further, we also introduced the Mission Life. This Mission Life or lifestyle for environment. For example, what does this mean? Recently, I was going through a topper's copy, the evaluation of a topper. I guess, I don't remember the name of that topper. She mentioned about, he or she, I don't remember. She mentioned about Mission Life, and she said that it starts with basic habits, the day-to-day habits of breakfast, lunch and dinner. How does that mean? That if you are thinking about turning or making yourself responsible about the climate, about the environment, then the Mission Life will be actually implemented. How does that mean? If you are actually, for example, you use a packet of milk in early morning. Instead of throwing that paper into directly dustbin, you should do what? Or that plastic wrapper into a dustbin. What you should do is, you should think that I need to segregate it. I need to differentiate the wet waste from the dry waste. I need to differentiate from the organic waste from the plastic waste. I was going through a case study of a Delhi couple who turned their home into a natural stay. And in Delhi, when there is 700 AQI outside, their home was having an AQI of 50, just 50. That too in Delhi only, without air purifiers. When there was hot, humid temperatures in Delhi with 50 degrees, their home was having a temperature of 27 degrees. That is how you should understand that mission life actually works. This mission was introduced in G20 summit lastly, and this actually tries that all the community should change their lifestyle habits towards greener economy. Clear? Further, we need to understand about Stiglitz Commission. What was this commission about? This commission was on the measurement of economic performance and social progress. Remember, economic performance, that how much growth are we doing, and social progress, how much socially are we progressing, like how much health, education, living standards are getting better. So there are two aspects, growth and development. That is Stiglitz Commission. Remember it, this commission was under Joseph Stiglitz. It was established by French government in 2008. Our book talks about this commission. We can clearly use the recommendations and we can clearly use this example into our means. The final report in 2009 talked about a criticism of GDP. Remember, the UPSC asked a question that why GDP is not actually a proper or perfect parameter for accounting. You can clearly mention Stiglitz Commission that how it critiqued the GDP. It said that GDP as a measure of progress, and it also mentions that it is as a measure of demanded items like leisure and any metrics of social progress are not included into GDP. Thereby, we should understand leisure time, trust, mutual confidence, community confidence. These are, or I would say sharing the meals. These are some of the aspects which we read in the last lecture about happiness and development. These aspects should be included. And then we talk about life economics. That is all about life economics. That when we talk about human development, when we talk about social progress, regenerative economy, circular economy, this is life economics. So this was discussed in United Nations Summit of the Future. Remember, this summit took place in 2024. This summit highlighted a crucial shift. It talked about that life economics and the future of development. Life economics and the future of development is a paradigm, and it should align with economic activities with sustainable development goals, because it is being argued across newspapers that we are not even near to achieve 10 sustainable goals. Leave aside 17 by 2030. Lastly, also, when there were MDGs, Millennium Development Goals, which were to be achieved by 2015, they were also not achieved, all of them. Similarly, SDGs at least should have been achieved by all the economies of the world, but they are not. We are not on the track to achieve them. Why? Because we are not talking about life economics. Now, this is a crucial aspect for your mains exam. You must remember it and must keep a note of it. Life economics talks about human development, regenerative economy, impact economy. What kind of impact is there? It is not only on natural ecosystem. It is not only on natural habitat. The impact is across multiple dimensions. It is about inequality, it is about poverty, it is about malnutrition, it is about environmental damage, forests, climate. All of it is included into it. Further, planetary boundaries, well-being economy, all of this is included into life economics. Understood? Next, what are the alternatives of economic framework? That when we talk about economy per se is about GDP, is about growth, is about development. But there is more to it. How should we think out of the box? The narrow, or I would say narrow understanding of economics, which talks about just growth and development. Our economic aspect or perspective should be beyond this. And thereby we will come across terms like donut economy. What is a donut economy? You all might have had a donut in a restaurant or a food court. Donut, or the shape of donut. This concept of donut economy was given by Kate Raworth, and he mentions about this thing that we as humans have basic necessities. Basic necessities like food, shelter and clothing. Now, once we fulfill these basic necessities, then we have potential to grow. That is to fulfill the comfort level of all of us. That is if we have minimal food, minimal shelter and minimal clothing, that is minimalism. But then again we need to find out what the comfort of all of us, that this clothing should be good, this shelter should be good, this should be dignified. But beyond that, when we over exploit the natural resources, thereby when I talked about the Earth Overshoot Day in one of the lectures, in the first lecture of this chapter 3rd, I mentioned about that all of the students should read about Earth Overshoot Day, which is a concept in the environment, not in economics. But you must remember that donut economy talks about that Earth actually is overshooting every year. We are having illogical, irrational consumption of Earth's natural resources, which means whatever was there for future generations is being consumed by current generation. Whatever Earth can produce in 1 year is being utilized and consumed in less than 1 year. That is why this donut economy, well-being economy, solidarity economy, impact economy should be understood. Donut economy balances first essential needs and planetary boundaries, that to how much extent can we exploit the environment. Social and solidarity economy prioritizes social and environmental well-being over profit. Well-being economy talks about serving the people and planet, not serving yourself, not talking about profit. The first lecture, if you remember, I told you that Adam Smith and Simon Kuznets talked about the early classicals of economics. They talked about invisible hand, and they said that there will be the forces of profit and the forces of marginal utility, which will tend producers and consumers to act rationally. Producers will act to gain more profit, consumers will act to gain more utility. Both will fight on that, but that is the narrowest form of economics. But we need to understand the holistic form of economics. Further, we will just explain all of this later, but before that, when we talk about economics, or when we talk about all of these approaches, I would like to highlight over here. Okay, first we will go to donut economics, then we will come back to the other aspects of it. Donut economics basically talks about the K. Treworth, who gave this concept. It talks about a visual framework, a framework whereby we will account for sustainable development. That is, we have essential needs like food, water, healthcare. This is the essential part of economics, or this is the essential part of life, where we should understand that our needs or our essential needs are limited to a particular level. And if we remain in this level, do you remember the concept of which we discussed earlier, production possibility curve? This is mentioned in NCERT. You should read about it. Production possibility frontier talks about a scenario whereby we can produce two goods, for example, good A and good B, and we can produce only a limited capacity or a limited amount of good A and good B. Now, this production possibility curve says that if we produce it at this level, this is our potential GDP. But if we go beyond this, because we are utilizing all our resources, all our natural, human capital, any resource we have, all the resources, we can produce this much of goods and this much of services. Once we produce this much of goods and services, if we need to produce more, either we need more resources, either we need to import more resources or acquire more resources, or what we can do is we can over-exploit. Similarly, this donut economy also talks about this thing, that if we remain in this level, this is where we stay below our potential. But then again, there are safe limits where we can have all the resources which Earth produces within 1 year, and we can consume them all by having less climate change, by conserving biodiversity. Within these safe limits, all of this is conserved, not exploited. But when we go beyond this, thereby this is the planetary boundary. This is the boundary. When we go beyond this boundary, we will exploit the planet. This is where the planetary boundaries are actually to be met, that we cannot cross these planetary boundaries. We cannot cross the Earth overshoot day. Clear yahan tak? Now, once we are done with these concepts, we need to remember one more thing. Okay, this is donut economics. Now we will change the topics from hereby, and now this slide, what you need to do is you need to utilize this slide once you are discussing about the economic frameworks, or once you are discussing about that how should our economic thinking change and how should our economic parameters or parameters of growth and development change. We should include all of this into our economic accounting, natural accounting and total GDP accounting. That is all from the developmental aspect. Once this is done, we need to understand two more concepts or three more concepts. That is the concept of current day development, that how we actually measure a country as developed or a country as underdeveloped or a country as developing. Once we discuss this, the first aspect is how we measure and compare economies. Now we will be hereby collating the concepts of growth and the development both. We will be again revising the first chapter, the second chapter and the third chapter. The concepts of all of these discussions which we had till now will be revised from hereby onwards. Now we remember that we had a barter system in which we used to trade goods with goods. But then we have a monetary system whereby we have currencies which we are using to trade goods. Currencies are being used to exchange and have transactions. Simple. Now remember, or you all might be aware of this thing, that recently rupee is to dollar was around 90:1. That $1 costs us 90 rupees. Now this is something which came into news, and this is something which we call market exchange rate. Now what is market exchange rate? This is the rate at which a person can sell dollar to a person who is purchasing the dollar in rupees. This is the rate which market is defining about the exchange rate between dollar and rupee. How many dollars can be exchanged with how many rupees? Clear? It is simply a rate which we can say, for example, if I have to buy this remote, if it is selling in the market and this remote is worth of 100 rupees, it means one remote costs 100 rupees. That is the cost of this remote or the price of this remote. Usually we talk about that. But when I talk about its factory price, it may be only 50 rupees. Why is it selling in the market at 100 rupees? Because there are very few remotes and there are too many people who actually want this remote. So due to increased demand, the price of this remote got high. And due to high price, it is now sold at double the price of, double the cost, or double the factory price, or double the factory cost. That is how dollar is priced at currently market exchange rate. Because of the supply and demand of dollar, it actually talks about the market exchange rate of dollar. But why do we need this dollar? Because we needed at least one international economy with which all the countries will satisfy themselves. We will talk about this later, that once in the history we used to have different currencies across the world. Some people in the Yap Island, they used to have stone currency. The entire or one big stone was of a size of this board, or some of the stones were of the size of one building, and that was the currency of Yap Islanders. That is long back in the ancient history. Further, we had coins, we had terracotta coins, pottery seals, we had metal coins, gold coins, silver coins, copper coins, plastic currency and paper currency. But at the international level, we need to compare these currencies. So after the world wars, this was decided that okay, between all the economists, this was set that dollar, we should promote dollar, and this dollar will be backed by gold. There will be a gold standard which will be established in the world, and in order to publish $1 or in order to print $1, there will be exact amount of gold kept as a reserve for that dollar. So thereby dollar became the international currency. Slowly every country started accepting dollar. Some of the countries replaced their currency with dollar itself. Some of the countries started comparing and converting their currency into dollar. Clear? Now, once we understand this, we also need to understand that it is not just about currency to currency conversion. We can also understand that in the, I would say, developing world and in the developed world, the costing, domestic market, inflation is totally different concepts which we discussed earlier. For example, the costs of production, the factors of production in USA and the factors of production in China, they are entirely different. Why so? Land in USA may cost more rent than land in China. Capital in USA may cost more interest than in China. Labor in USA may cost more wages than in China. Similarly, there are two different worlds. But when we talk about purchasing power, for example, I am eating a one meal in India, one thali or one dosa I am eating in India, and one big platter I am eating in US. That platter in USA will cost me around $50 or $20 or $10. But the same thing in India will cost me 100 rupees. Which means a person living in USA will have to pay around 900 rupees for that one platter, while as a person in India will have to pay only 100 rupees for the same platter in India, which means 900 or I would say $10 and 100 rupees are same. It sets $1 equals to 10 rupees. Now, why do we compare this purchasing power parity, or why do we compare this, that do we actually have to compare this with meals only, or do we have to compare the economies or the two worlds with the purchasing power only? Why? Because do you remember in the development chapter we discussed about this thing. We discussed that all of it depends that do I have good health, do I have good food, do we have good living standards, do we have good education. Now all of this costs. Whether I go for education, whether I go for food, whether I go for cooking fuel, whether I go for electricity, this in developing world, in India, in China costs less than in USA. So thereby, if we compare in terms of income, then we can never compare with USA. For example, in USA, one labor for 1 hour charges $18. One labor for 1 hour charges $18, which in India would be roughly around 1800 or 1600 rupees. Say for example, 1600 rupees for 1 hour. But in India, if a labor is working in USA, he is costing or charging 1600 rupees for one labor, 1 hour. It means he may earn around, if he works for 5 or 8 hours a day, he may earn around 10,000 rupees, say for example. But in India, that is a salary of one person for entire month. If we compare based on income, if we compare based on market exchange rate, then India can never compare with US. Similarly, we can never compare the two economies. We can never have a comparative perspective of two economies. Rather, when we talk about development, development is all about accessibility to the necessities. This person in India who is earning only 10,000 rupees has a good life. In the rural world, in the rural India, he is having food at his home, he is having good nutritious food, he is having everything. He is having good education also within those 10,000 rupees only. But that person in USA might be poor because there everything is costing more than us. That is why we need to discuss that what can we purchase, or what products or goods are there available in Indian market, and what goods are available in the developed world or in the other economies, whether that is Japan, China, USA, Europe, anywhere. We need to compare economies in terms of purchasing power parity. What is purchasing power parity? That how much purchasing power does my economy, does my currency, does my rupee have as compared to the purchasing power of US dollar, or as compared to the purchasing power of Japanese yen, or as compared to the purchasing power of European sterling or pound. Clear? Now that is purchasing power parity. Now this purchasing power parity corrects the distortions which are there in the market exchange rate. Distortions as in $1 equals to 90 rupees. This is a distortion, because this is created because of the supply and demand shock in the dollar. This distortion is created because devaluation of currencies. This distortion is created due to depreciation of currencies. This market distortion should be removed, and we should actually talk about the real development, the real purchasing power of the economy, the real accessibility of goods to the people. Then only we can compare economies of the world. Similarly, in order to compare these economies, we will use purchasing power parity of the currencies. Now, how do we compare the economies? How do we understand purchasing power? What we will do is, for example, we will take 4, 5 or 8, 10 goods. Say for example 400 goods or 4 goods. I will hereby ask 3 of my goods, like for example 1 mouse, 1 pen and 1 remote and this mobile phone. Clear? These 4 goods, if I compare them, that how much their price is there in India and how much their price is there in USA, or how much price of a thali is there in India and how much price of that thali is there in US. But the goods should be of same quality, same nature, same quantity and at least same quality levels should be there maintained. And then we will compare that how much powerful my economy is, how many rupees do I need to have this product and how many dollars do I need to have this product. Then I can compare that if this product is of $2, if this product is of $2 and same product is of 100 rupees, that means $2 equals to 100 rupees. Remember in 10th class we used to have that maths of A equals to X and X equals to B, therefore A equals to B. Similarly, we are doing that only. Clear? Market rates are influenced by capital flows, forex reserves, growth prospects and geopolitics, not always reflecting the true purchasing power. That is why we need purchasing power parity. So why does it matter? Because it gives us true comparison, it gives us ground reality and it gives us the poverty estimates, and UN is creating Human Development Index for accurate poverty assessments. Clear? So this will help us in truly comparing the economies and understanding purchasing power parity and poverty. Understood? By purchasing power parity, if we talk about this, world's largest economy is China, then United States and then India. As per purchasing power parity, this is an astonishing fact which you all might not be knowing. One more thing which you need to remember is by market rate, when we talk about exchange rate or market exchange rate, India is 4th largest economy. By purchasing power parity, India is 3rd largest economy. This is the question which was asked by UPSC. Asked by UPSC in I guess 2020 or 2021. India's GDP 4.25 trillion, 1/4 of its purchasing power parity value. Further, IMF projects India will overtake Japan as 3rd largest economy, which was projected in 2025 and this will be achieved in 27 or sooner. Further, we also need to remember that there is a currency gap. For example, there is gap between US dollar and Indian rupee, and this currency gap or currency confidence gap, GDP is higher by market rate than purchasing power parity, because we know GDP of India is $4.25 trillion by what? By this market exchange rate, but it is 16 or $1.6 trillion by purchasing power parity, $16 trillion by purchasing power parity. So thereby we should understand that this global confidence is the actual strength. This global confidence is the actual strength. However, if we talk about rupee and Chinese yuan, US GDP or US market rate, make sure that globally everyone is confident of this market exchange rate, ensures that globally everyone is confident of US power and strength of its economy, because that makes its economy much stronger. However, if we talk about China and India or rupee and yuan, GDP is lower by market exchange rate and higher by purchasing power parity. This means that we are still resilient economies, but as per purchasing power parity, this economy says that if our market exchange rate is lower and purchasing power parity is high, it means that our currencies are actually undervalued or they are devalued. There is a devaluation in the economies. Somehow it is managed depreciation also, or somehow it is depreciation led by market forces. Now we need to understand what is depreciation and devaluation of the currency. Depreciation of rupee will mean simply when the power of rupee, when the exchange rate of rupee decreases as per market exchange rate, because there is high demand of dollar. That is why the value of rupee or the market exchange rate of rupee is depreciating. Second, devaluation means when countries' fiscal policy or monetary policy deliberately takes decisions to devalue their own currency. That has been happening with Chinese currency for a long time. Clear? Donut economy we already discussed. Now, in order to compare the economies with one another, there was this McDonald Big Mac Index. Now, what is McD Big Mac Index? This basically is the large size burger of McD. Now, this burger, its cost in USA and its cost in India is compared with each other, because McD is producing the same burger in India, McD is producing the same burger in USA. Now, what it was developed by the Economist magazine, and it is based on purchasing power parity. It talks about that if we see the price of this burger is 226 rupees in India, while as the same burger costs $6 in USA. By this logic, the purchasing power parity or the purchasing power rate or the exchange rate should be 37 rupees. By this logic, the exchange rate should be 37 rupees. However, currently it is at around 90 rupees. It is at around 90 rupees. So thereby it suggests that our currency is actually a bit devalued. Clear? That is why we need to understand that there are disparities between market exchange rate and purchasing power parity. Now, once we are done with this, we need to understand that when international comparison happens, we actually classify economies in the name of developed, developing, emerging world, underdeveloped, least developed, upper middle income countries. Now, this whole classification of economies across the world is done at international level, either by IMF, World Bank, other institutions, United Nations. They classify the economies, they classify the countries as per their economic status. Clear? Now, how does this happen? Countries are classified based on GDP, based on Human Development Index, based on infrastructure, industrialization and other things. For example, the developed world or the developed economies, which we usually refer to USA, Europe, they have advanced development post-industrial revolution. Their service sector is dominant. Developing world, this is underdeveloped. Their industrial base is low. They have low Human Development Index. They have high demographic dividend or high demographic growth. That means their population is rising at a larger level. While as emerging markets, what are these markets? These are those markets, per se, India is somehow called as emerging market because they have rapid growth, their growth rate is high, they are transitioning towards the developed world. They will be called as developed economies in near future. Clear? What are these emerging markets? These emerging markets where rapid growth and rapid industrialization is there, they have low to middle income per capita, middle per capita income, while as their growth potential is high. They are increasing in productivity and purchasing power, middle class is also growing, improved infrastructure is there. However, they are volatile due to political risks. There are conflicts, there are coups, there are chaos, there are riots in these regions. Clear? There are these problems. However, the main example of this is BRICS nation, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, Latin America, Middle East, African countries are so. Clear? IMF also classifies the economies in terms of advanced economies, EMDs. About 40 economies are classified by IMF on the basis of high per capita income. Emerging markets and developing economies, all remaining countries are called as emerging markets and developing economies. Clearly understood? One more classification is given by World Bank. The classification goes on from high income, upper middle income, lower middle income and low income. First it is, if the income per capita is more than $14,000, it is called as high income. 4,000 to 14,000, high or upper middle income. 1,146 to 4,500, it is lower middle income and then low income countries. This is the classification given by World Bank. Further, the countries in the Gulf region, whether that is Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, UAE, Oman, they are classified as Gulf Cooperation Council classifies them that they are developing economies but with high income. Why? Because their income is high because of their dependence on oil and gas, because of their nature, and they are limited in terms of export baskets. They are underdeveloped and these economies prevent them, or the underdevelopment prevents them because of their high growth rate due to oil and natural gas. They are having a high income, but the actual growth or actual development at the ground level is low. That is why they are not classified as developed economies. Clear? One more thing which you need to remember is, in order for a country to grow and progress towards developed nation, these economies are somehow stuck in middle income trap. Like if we talk about this, lower middle income and upper middle income, there is very much difficult phase from transitioning from lower middle income to high middle income or upper middle income. Why does this happen? Because some of the countries, they do have low middle income countries, they are low middle income countries, but their growth stops at some point. And after that, what happens is, they still have traditional drivers, like their labor is cheap, which is not increasing its cost. They are low at industrial level. There is corruption. There is significant delays due to bureaucratic nature. Innovation is very less. There is less, I would say, investment in research and development. In India, it is less than 1% of GDP. Human capital deficit, their demography or the demographic dividend is very less. Because in India also we are seeing that around 40-42% of the people who are graduating every year are not having market ready skills. This is the main phenomena behind the middle income trap, which you should write in your exam, because skill development and upskilling has been one of the themes of UPSC mains. Clear? Now this middle income challenge can be, or in India we are also facing this middle income challenge. This can be, or I would say identified, or I would say this can be located by the numbers of employment. We should boost the research and development and innovation in India, improve the education and skills, enhance the infrastructure, and we should escape this trap of low middle income by upskilling. One more term which you might find in news is least developed countries. What are these least developed countries? They are classified by United Nations, and United Nations highlights that there are severe challenges in these economies. Like these economies have very low income per capita. Around $1,088 per capita income is there. Their human assets are very weak. Poor, malnourished, hunger, anemia, stunting, low birth rate, this is highly prevalent. Low, I would say high child mortality, high infant mortality, high maternal mortality is there. High vulnerability is also there. Susceptibility to economic and environmental shocks is also there. That is what is leading the nation. That is what is making these nations face, or that is what is making the problems for these nations. Okay? Next, LDC graduation criteria, that how a country should increase, or how a country should understand that how we can develop or we can progress from least developed country to the upper middle income country, or the we can escape the trap from low middle income country to upper middle income country. Okay? Now, first of all, income threshold should increase to around $1,306 per capita. Second, there should be human assets, that is we should invest in health and education. Third, economic resilience should be, I would say, developed by making the economy resilient. For example, the programs which Indian government has introduced like Atmanirbhar Bharat, the production linked incentive scheme, the technology transfer, these will make the economy actually resilient. Clear? Currently, we have around 44 such countries which are classified as least developed countries. They are eligible for special international support. They include preferential market access and technical assistance criteria, which is revised every 3 years. Clear? One more thing. That is, when we talk about GDP, when we talk about development, growth and development, both of them, we should understand that there is something more which goes beyond GDP. What is this? That we started with the evolution metrics. Like for example, in the early years of 1930s, we used to focus primarily on GDP. Post that, in 1990s, we had developmental index, or we had a focus on developmental economics. From 2008 to 9, the critics of GDP like Stiglitz Commission, financial crisis prompted thinking that should state be again called into question, should we again think about the role of state, the role of development, or should we go beyond this development and GDP, that is by saving the planet, by understanding planetary boundaries. Then in 2010, we introduced this inequality adjusted human development index, and post that gross happiness index was also introduced. Bhutan's gross happiness index, this gained the global recognition. In 2020s, now we are seeing the planetary pressures human development index, wealth inequality, this wealth adjusted human development index, life economics, the integrated sustainable frameworks, life mission. We are witnessing circular economies. Now, this is how we are taking the subject of economics beyond GDP, beyond development, and beyond its, I would say, the boundaries which were set traditionally. Clear? So, thereby, we hereby conclude all of this. There is the, at the last, we have the summary, or I would say, main summary slides, in which once you go through all of this, you will find that all of the sustainability imperatives and all of the life economics or natural capital recognition, which we recently discussed in this lecture also, this all has been summarized. And with this, we conclude the chapter 3rd. And we should understand that if a question comes in mains about development or economic growth, which has been a persistent theme of UPSC, always every year we find a question about this. So thereby what we should do is, we should understand that there is this main topic about development, and we should conclude with this, and we should at least give one way forward to these questions, because as per or till now our understanding has developed that in the past we used to focus on growth, then development, then multiple other aspects of development, then going beyond development and understanding the nature of development, natural capital. We should at least think that this developmental progress is a thing which will persist and it will expand its horizons much more than this. There is, I would say, exploration of space, militarization of space. There are questions about the environment or about the atmosphere of the, or about the space or about universe exploration, where economics also has a part to play. That is why there should be a way forward, and with that we should conclude these questions. Understood? Clearly, that would be all from my side, and that is how we conclude this lecture. From the next video, we will start chapter 4th of this book. With this, I conclude today's discussion. Thank you once again for being here. Jai Hind.